And he makes interesting, I mean, those residents have raised interesting points, you know. He winded up by saying, you know, there's some who view them as flower girls. There are those who say the considerations are about that. Which clan do they come from? You know, maybe to keep the peace, to bolster the votes. What considerations would you make, Charles, were you to pick a deputy governor?
First and foremost, without flower girls, I don't think a wedding looks really nice. So I think flower girls are not very bad also. So my contention is that the Constitution is very clear on the number of county executive committee members that you can have. If you have over 30 members of the county assembly, then you can only have a maximum of 10 county executive committee members, other than the governor and the deputy governor. And below then, that is a percentage. So I think to me, the first consideration would be someone I can work with. This fear of the running mate must drop. If you pick someone, he's competent in a certain field, be it finance or agriculture, for instance. You look at the functions that are devolved as per the 4th schedule, and you pick someone who can pick one of those functions and literally help you run that particular function, especially the one that you want to be strong in. And it's that simple. If that person is doing it, and the credit will naturally come to you. Unfortunately, when that happens, and the deputy governor is on social media launching this project, the other project, Kenyans have a way of now identifying that particular person and isolating the person who is sitting at the perch as a governor. So I think that fear is something we need to kill. And that is why I would also want to associate myself with those people who are proposing even governors should just serve one term, so that this fear of what happens after that and who is getting credit for what, it dies. Otherwise, you have CEC members, you are paying an extra county executive committee member for something that can comfortably be done by someone that is being paid by the money that belongs to people. This is taxpayers' money. So nothing stops you from having 9 CEC members other than the deputy and the governor. Then the 10th one is filled by your own deputy. And then he helps you coordinate. You take the credit. It's very easy to take the credit. But again, back to Raya, the people who elect these people, I think it's time you started appreciating that it's the governor you are electing. It doesn't matter who comes in as a so-called flower girl, as a running mate. Ultimately, when the decisions on who is the governor after elections are concluded and people are sworn in, it will literally vest on the governor. It is him who will determine what happens and what role the deputy governor will have. Unfortunately, that is the constitution we have today. And we can talk about amending the constitution in future, but for now, we don't know. Nothing has happened to help us appreciate that. Maybe we might have a different constitution in regard to devolved governments. So it is time Kenyans across the board appreciate that when you're electing a governor, much as you're concerned and you're keen on who the running mate is, it is only important to appreciate that running mate when it comes to the person that is a governor be exiting from that position by way of passing away, God forbid, or being impeached. Impeachment, we have seen, is hardly working because of the way the courts have managed that. We have seen even where it is impossible to run a county government, and even the governors themselves want it suspended. Makueni being a case study, and I think Grantot Saboja is working on it, where everyone now is sent home. Even that, the president at some point refused to assent to. So we are saying it is at the point when you're electing these people that you need to be very careful and appreciate that that person you have elected governor is the one and only. These are the ones, flower girls, whatever you want to call them, they can only assist him, they can only be there at his beck and call. And if you do that, then you'll find all these fights are not there, because the governor will know he has the full mandate of the people. It's not about the deputy or the other person, and he will serve knowing so. That way also, anybody who is a running mate can be able to comfortably resign and go home if he doesn't feel like he's very comfortable there. But the consideration, if it was a personal call on me, I would go for someone who can work with me, someone I can delegate to, without feeling like he's stabbing me in the back at every opportunity. And it's not easy. It sounds almost Christianish, but I think it's a good thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jack, do you agree with Charles? You know, you made the point that you feel like these deputy governors are, as Maulid said, flower girls. You know, that we would really not feel it were they not in office. Were you offered the job of a deputy governor, would you take it?
No. In some counties, like West Pokot, if you said deputy governors are flower girls, you literally have to look for those flower girls to apologize to them, because it would be an insult to the flower girls.
Oh my goodness.
It's something worse than that. Having said that, my attention is drawn to Section 32 of the County Government Act, which I had quoted that what are the roles of the deputy governors. One is to deputize the governor, and two, to be assigned role of executive by the governor. And even if you look at the scheduler provisions of that particular act of parliament, I think it's Schedule 2, on the oath or affirmation for a deputy governor, it's more of that of a governor, but the difference is that even as they swear or as they are being affirmed to the office, they say that they will give counsel and advice to the governor, a true counsel and advice to the governor. And the governors have advisors, the legal advisors, economic advisors, different sets of advisors. So you may not necessarily need a deputy for advice or for counsel. You can have a group of advisors, a bevy of advisors, and even assistants, aides who can advise you on a number of key issues. Having said that, the reality is that in certain cosmopolitan counties like Nairobi County, Nairobi City County, Nakuru, maybe like Kipia, Nyandarua, places like Migori, Mombasa, you'll find that what the gubernatorial candidate would go for are ethnic balances. For instance, in Migori, where the majority are either Luos or Subas, and then of course there are Kurias and other minority tribes, if you are going to be a gubernatorial candidate, you definitely just go for a Kuria guy to be your running mate. Not necessarily that he's a qualified person, but because ethnic reality would compel you to do that. Otherwise, you wouldn't get the numbers. Two, the gubernatorial candidates would go for people who are considered to be laid back and who may not necessarily antagonize them and who may not necessarily breach the first law of power, never to outshine your master, which is what Igathe tried to do. And I mean, history is very clear as to what happened to him. The other things, other considerations, like of course the academic qualification, that is constitutional, so you may not have to contend with someone who is not qualified to be a governor. But the governors also have considerations as to, you know, if it is a remote county, they normally pick, you know, people of the ground, teachers, for instance, who are able to interact with the populace and be able to know, or administrative persons who are able to know the topography and the geography of the county, know the people there, they have the network and everything, because you might be a successful business magnate or someone who's worked in the government, but you based in Nairobi. When you go back home, you want to be a governor, you probably might need someone who has been on the ground and knows the ground well to be your running mate. These are the considerations, some of which are so far-fetched. Ideally, it is what my brother is saying, that you need someone who you can work with. But do you think, or to him, I need to plan when I die, I need to be telling the people of Migori, you know, so I'm giving you someone who can even work when I die or there's a vacancy in my office. No one plans for a vacancy in their offices. And to that extent, human nature dictates, because human are inherently selfish. They wouldn't want to plan for their vacancy, so that I would be taking Olive to be my based on the fact that she can perform the functions of the governor as and when I exit.
Okay.
Human beings would not plan that way. And having said that, I am still of the view that even if the deputy governors were never there, the executive roles would still, because you just need to, if you want someone to deputize you, you can pick one of the numbers of the SEC members to deputize you as and when you want to. I mean, Sonko has survived without a deputy for as long as there are elections in this country. And I mean, As to whether there is performance or otherwise, that's a debate for another day. But
okay. Charles, Sonko keeps coming up.
Yes.
We've had Jack make reference to what happened to Polycarp Igathe, saying, you know, we learned from him that you should never outshine your master.
Yes.
We've had Sonko say that, you know, he's not compelled by anything.
Yes.
Or by any timelines
Yes.
to name a deputy governor, and therefore he can take his sweet time.
Yes.
And he pointed the finger at Senate.
True.
Do you agree that some responsibility lies with the Senate?
It is true, they're the lawmakers, and I would have taken it further than that, because much as the Senate makes laws that relate to counties, the National Assembly can initiate the process of making any law that cuts across, whether it's county governments or national governments. So let us talk about Parliament in general. Parliament has failed, because by now they should have amended the provisions of the County Governments Act, in the sense that what Sonko was saying in simple terms is, much as there was an advisory, and I think it was sought by the Speaker of Embu at some point, on how you replace a deputy governor. And the court pronounced itself on that matter as an advisory and said within 14 days, because you cannot read that provision on the replacement of a deputy governor without reading concurrently with the provision on replacement of the deputy president in the event that office is vacant. Because they said the law is always alive, it's always active, it's always there, it's always talking to us. It's not like the law is silent at some point and then you know, rises up at some point. So they were saying, if the president is required by the law to appoint a deputy president within 14 days, that should also, you know, inform what happens at the level of the county government. And Sonko did actually appoint someone, nominate someone in the name of Miguna. And I think that was brilliance on his part, because he knew there is no way the assembly that comprises of individuals that support Uhuru Munyui Kenyatta and others that support Raila Odinga, whom collectively have a problem with this gentleman because of the way he antagonizes them. He knew there is no way that name is going to pass. So beyond that, the advisory could not have gone beyond that and say, now that this person was not successful, what happens? That can only be fueled by some piece of legislation, in terms of what happens if a name is rejected. What timelines do you have to come up with another name? What should happen? And I am surprised that there are so many gaps in our laws that National Assembly and Senate have sat on. They are not really keen on filling. I'm giving you an example of what happened with the Mombingoge determination in the review on the governor of Samburu. And she was clear, the section that people are talking about, Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, Section 62(6), is unconstitutional, to the extent that Kenyans did not come up with a law, with the whole chapter of the Constitution on leadership and integrity, only for those benefits to be taken away by a provision, a subsection of a section of an act of parliament. And that is a matter that is in court, so we might not talk about the merits and demerits of the issue. But she affirmed what had been decided by the subordinate court on the matter of the governor of Samburu. What we are trying to say is, supposing a situation like that arises, where the governor of Nairobi ends up in court on corruption or economic crime, and it's going to happen, or it has happened, or he has anything to worry about. But supposing it happens, and then you find yourself having to be suspended, because it's not about stepping aside. Stepping aside is objective. Being suspended has nothing to do with you or liking it or doing notes. The moment you are charged, Section 62 of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act says you stand suspended if you are a state officer. So what happens when you don't have a deputy governor to take over certain functions? Thirdly, you don't have a substantive speaker, because the one who was there was removed by MCAs, although I think the court reinstated her. And if anything, even if the speaker is there, the Constitution envisages a situation whereby the speaker only takes over to organize an election. So do you get suspended and then you assume to be impeached? At what point does the speaker take over? Because the speaker cannot come over to run over a county government without the foundation of any law whatsoever, because the only provision is that he or she comes in to organize an election within a certain period of time. So does the speaker take over acting capacity until maybe the governor is cleared, and the governor, the moment you are suspended, there is no way you're going to nominate a deputy governor, to be approved by the county assembly. Those are the issues that the National Assembly and the Senate should be working really hard on, so that we don't have these gaps. Otherwise, we might find ourselves in a constitutional crisis in the event we find ourselves there. But bottom line, the case of Sonko will always be a case to look at, I don't know why he has not decided to pick someone.
Okay, but
for posterity's sake.
Jack's reaction.
He can even pick Jack.
Reactions to some of what you said was telling. You mentioned Miguna and his snickered, and then he interjected saying there is a substantive speaker.
Yeah,
but of course,
she was reinstated by the court.
Yes.
But she didn't go to the office. The person who is acting is an MCA, I guess. The MCA is, by law, MCA cannot again act as governor.
A senator, speaker. Even as a governor.
You cannot act as a governor. You cannot be MC at the same time a governor. And there is no such position as acting speaker.
Exactly.
There's no
it's for a
such position
session
as acting speaker. I mean, Charles has gotten into the point of discussing the merits and demerits of the case before the Court of Appeal now. It's sub judice. I don't know whether you would want us to, although I have a completely different view and opinion on that. My view has been that Mumbi, the High Court judge, promulgated a new constitution. There is no such thing as suspension of elected leaders. There's only removal and when there is a vacancy in the office. So suspension, to me, would be, if there is an act of parliament that talks about suspension, it would be inconsistent with the constitution, and to that extent null and void. Having said that, I want to, in the interest of consistency, in the interest of stability, and in the interest of collective responsibility for the county governments and even governments in general. Did you know that Article 179 says that whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the governor, members of the executive, the sect members, they cease to hold office? So that it's called Barchok. Barchok today, already at the day, is supposed to name members of the executive, his own members of the executive, unless he decides out of his own magnanimity to retain the ones that were appointed by Governor Laboso, former Governor Laboso. Those are some of the gaps that we really need to look at, and we decide whether we want to amend the constitution and, of course, make provisions, specific provisions in the law, as Charles has said. Because my opinion is that the members ought to continue to hold office for continuity, for stability. And because there is collective responsibility, when the governor was there were members of his cabinet. Why would, when the deputy governor assumes office, why would they cease to hold office? Well, some of the tough questions that we need to ask ourselves as Kenyans, and know whether we really need to make some panel beating to our constitution.
Okay, and